We've seen a lot of shows about those first few years in college, right? And they're usually navigating all the sex and the debauchery and finding ourselves in all that mess. Well, today, there's a new show out called Overcompensating, and it's giving us a whole new take on all that horny confusion. I'm Rad Simponpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. So, Overcompensating, it stars and is created by Benito Skinner, who you may know from Instagram or TikTok as Benny Drama. That's where he popped off impersonating celebrities like the Kardashians and Shawn Mendes and Jennifer Coolidge.
Makes me want a hot dog real bad.
So that wasn't Jennifer Coolidge, that's Benny Drama nailing the impersonation. And now Benito Skinner, he has his own show on Prime Video where he's not playing other people, he's playing a version of himself.
Welcome to college.
You can be whoever you want to be here, can you?
I'm starting to think I am better at being in the closet.
Yes, no matter how much we try to pretend to be something that we are not, does not mean we are that thing.
That's from the trailer for Overcompensating, in which Benito Skinner is playing a closeted former football player who's struggling to accept himself while at college. And this character is rooted in Benito's own experience growing up in Idaho, where he threw himself into football to hide his sexuality. And to talk about Benito Skinner's new show, we got Jackson Weaver and Chris Murphy. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. I'm glad y'all are here. Listen, Chris, I'm going to start with you because I never heard of Benito Skinner before this show, but I understand millions of people who follow him on social media, like they do. So for those of us who haven't heard of him, tell me more about like what made him pop, like what made him stand out from all the other people on TikTok that are doing these kinds of celebrity impersonations.
Well, I was going to say you obviously haven't been on TikTok if you haven't heard of Benny Drama, Benito Skinner. But yeah, I mean, he's really sort of a classic character comedian. He loves impersonating people in pop culture, as you said, the Kardashians, specifically Kourtney Kardashian. He does a really incredible Kourtney Kardashian, which is kind of a hard person to impersonate if you're familiar with her personality. Lana Del Rey, Jennifer Coolidge, Shawn Mendes. And he also has original characters like, Jenny the hairdresser, and just a wealth of different personalities that he embodies. And I think the thing that sets him apart is that they're all very funny, but it never feels like he's really making fun of them in a mean way. A lot of these people who he does impersonate on TikTok have embraced him and have taken him in as, one of their own. So he films all these videos with, the Kardashians and Kourtney and, Jennifer Coolidge and all of these people. So I think he's coming at TV, not from a stand-up, not Seinfeld, not from a stand-up perspective, but really from a character comedian. That's his background. Yeah, from a character comedy background.
I love that. I mean, Charlie XCX is in this show. I understand they're friends. Did they get together and hook up because he started impersonating her?
No, but that's funny. He does do a Charlie impression, but his boyfriend, Terry O'Connor, is one of her creative directors, and he works on her team. So they've been friends for years and years and years. So there's a big web of Benny Drama. He's ingratiated himself into a lot of celebrities' lives by way of his talent and also personal relationships.
That's amazing. Well, look, I mean, Jackson, after impersonating all these other people, now Benito, he's creating this show that's about a character that's basically whose story is much like his own. So in a nutshell, like, what is Benny's story in this show?
I mean, queer never have I ever is basically how I would describe it. But I mean, it's the perennial story of somebody who grows up, I mean, specifically for him in the 90s, as someone who's in a somewhat more accepting society for queerness, for being gay, not necessarily literally illegal, but it's still not the best thing to find out you are, especially when you're a boy among friends you're not sure are going to accept you. And then you try and cover that by being as straight as possible. You make up a fake version of yourself, and then you get to university, you see gay straight alliances, and you flail towards some sort of authenticity, some sort of self-acceptance. The divide between either becoming your true self or, hearkening to the thing that has gotten you all the accolades, all the acceptance up to that point. And I think it's a pretty universal story, a pretty, well learned and well earned experience. There's a book called The Velvet Rage that is about how if you are a gay man and has grown up in a straight world, as all of us kind of have, you will have created this fake self, this way to hide from shame and covet validation. And when you finally get to the point where you are sort of making the baby steps towards giving up that fake version of yourself, you realize that your ability to support your own sense of self, have your own sort of self-confidence is totally juvenile and not necessarily there. And all you need is external validation. And this show is kind of all about that, where like he does not have any sort of self confidence or ability to feel good about himself unless it's people telling him he's good at football, or he is great at hooking up with girls, or he's really hot, and he needs that, but he also needs to be himself. And yeah, it's a very recognizable sort of stage of life for the young gay man, I think I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that's very universal about it, but then as you say, there's also something very specific. And I understand that, I mean, this show struck a personal chord with you. Can you talk to me more about that?
I mean, this show is me. This show is about me. I mean, I am almost literally the exact same age as Benny Skinner. I also was a football player, and I also had my first year of university kind of flailing towards self-acceptance. I also watched not George of the Jungle, but VHS's. And like the first scene of the show is where he is like a little kid watching George of the Jungle on VHS and like kind of realizing, oh wait, I like this differently than the other people in this room with me. And there's like the scene where he says he doesn't want to do drugs because he's not sure what he'll say, and then like he has this like vision in his head of the second he smokes weed, he just says, I'm a homosexual to all of his friends because he doesn't have that impulse control. And I mean, yeah, that is very, very close to me. But I think the idea of, we live in a very privileged era in society where homosexuality is not, again, as I said, literally illegal. But as that book talks about, there's a difference between homophobia, which is the fear of being gay, and gay shame, which is the idea that one is fundamentally unlovable. And that comes about from when you realize that you have what's called a horizontal difference or trait from your parents, something that is not inherited. Like you share your race with your parents. Usually you share some physical appearance, you might share your language. But if you are, for example, maybe deaf, or if you are homosexual, that is usually not shared. So you're kind of atomized, isolated from everyone around you. And you realize, even if people are, again, not pitchfork carrying haters of gay people, that you don't want to let down your parents. You don't want to be different than the kids in the playground. You need to create this false person that can get validation, that can get people saying you're good, and then that can destroy, as I said, your ability to feel good about yourself. Because if you get validation for something that isn't really yourself, if you, like, for example, borrow somebody's car and someone says that you have a great car, you don't really feel great about it because it's not your car. If you cheat on a test and you get an A, you don't feel great about it because that's not your work. And if you create a false self and have people say, you're great at sports, or you're great at, again, good in girls is kind of what's in the show, it will make you feel hollow. And the longer you go without being able to change who you are and accept who you are and create a person that people actually notice that also reflects who you are inside, you will just be empty and hollow for a long time. And the first year university era where he's just given up football is very, very, very close to my experience, and I think to a lot of other people's experience in this specific window of time.
Can I tell you, like, this is so much more than I expected to take away from this show when you first, when you watch the first episode of this show.
It's like queer never have I ever, and then it's something else.
Oh, yeah. Well, Chris, I mean, look, like, this is a show that's produced by A24, and A24, usually they're known for like kind of boundary pushing shows. I mean, this is the house that gave us Euphoria and Beef and The Curse. And, when you start off this show, I mean, it feels like, so it starts off like feeling like something more conventional. Like it's like splitting the difference between like American Pie and Sex Lives of College Girls. But, I do feel like it is going somewhere further. Can you talk to me about how it navigates the plot, that navigates this experience in college, and where the new places it takes that?
Yeah, I think, well, it's funny, Jackson, to say we have a lot in common. As same age as Betty Drama, also played football in in school and
Did you
came
guys
out like in high school.
also
So maybe it's like exactly the
were you
same.
also singing Nicki Minaj's Super Bass all over the place
Literally,
as this
just one
character
of those
does?
the booming system, top down AC with the cooling system. I
Word
could
for
say that
word.
entire thing.
I was more of a bottoms up guy, but yeah, but sort of basically the same. But really, the A24, I think we forget that A24 has had it's boundary pushing in a lot of ways, but they make a lot of great comedies. I mean, Z-Way was on for 2 seasons. That was an A24 co-production. And they're not afraid to take big swings and to really invest in talent and people that they specifically believe in. And it's very clear that Betty Drama and Benito is a new, a voice and a talent that they really, have invested a lot of time and energy and resources in. So it's as much as it is about boundary pushing with the types of, the content. And I do think Overcompensating is a pretty traditional coming out narrative, a traditional sitcom, which is becoming rarer and rarer these days, I would say. Um, but it really is about investing in, I think, Benny as a comedic voice. And I think it's creating a world and something that I think, I don't know if we'll get to the chatter online, but it's so clearly to me, as someone who is like basically the same exact age as Benny, set in the 2010s. People went to college. It's a millennial college gay show.
Yeah.
And I think some people are having, because that's not explicitly said, I think some people are having a little bit of trouble connecting those dots, but it's so clearly it's supposed to be a slice out of Benny's college experience, which I think is fantastic.
And the confusion's coming from, like, well, how can Charlie XCX be this popular at this age if it's set in 2010? Like, what timeline is this? And why is this what we're talking about?
And they're filming like TikToks and like using iPads to pay. So there's some stuff that does not necessarily
It's a little anachronistic, a little bit. But like the spirit and the heart of it is so, millennial, late stage millennial, I would say.
So Jackson, like I want to take a moment to listen to part of a conversation that Benito Skinner had with Q guest host Talia Schlanger, where she talked to him about modifying his voice for the role. Have a listen.
As a closeted version of myself, it was just like, how monotone can I be? My voice, naturally, I go everywhere and I can kind of sing song. And I think when I'm Benny in the closet, it's like, how just can I go? It really felt kind of empowering in a way, I think, to have power over this. Whereas before it felt like I was maybe forced to do it in order to, have acceptance and love. But in the show, it just felt like, oh yeah, now I can do this.
Jackson, I mean, there's an aspect of that. It sounds to me like code switching, but like, talk to me about like, how does that aspect of the show, how does it handle that? How does it tap into the experiences that we don't often see in television shows?
I will say that I think what Chris was saying before is that it is kind of a straightforward traditional sitcom, and there are sort of aspects to this that are kind of beat for beat, and I'm drawing a lot out of this just because of my own personal experiences, not necessarily because the show is super deep as of yet. But I do think that true code switching aspect of it does really bore down to what the specific kind of late millennial experience was. Because I mean, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who I went to high school with, who was also queer, we wanted to do a podcast about specifically the differences between growing up queer in early 2000s and now, because there is such a different strain of that experience where there is, as I said before, not the forceful illegality of homosexuality. But I mean, even the gay straight alliances, that was almost anachronistic to me, because that level of acceptance was not necessarily quite as prevalent or prominent as my experience was. And it was always this tacit thing that you don't necessarily want to be. It's not going to kill you if you are queer, but you don't want anyone to think that you are. And I think what this show does, show for Benny's personal experience, is him kind of moving from, there's supposed to be 3 stages, as that book elucidates, of what it is like to be a gay person, which is being overwhelmed by shame. And that's the first stage, when you realize there's something different about you and you do everything you can to hide that, to switch up your voice, to switch up your walk, to adopt all of these different sort of avenues of being. And then there's like a search for authenticity, and then there's the true authenticity, which you actually do accept yourself. And I think that he is kind of showing in the meta aspect of creating the show how he's reached that final stage. And he is not necessarily, opting for a monotone voice to hide who he is, which is, this true portrayal of his true self. But he is now, taking back control, and he's trying to show what that experience was like. And if he's getting accolades for showing that experience, it is an authentic validation. So I think that is like, we have older stories. We have like Goodbye Berlin. We have, A Boy's Own Story. But these are gay narratives that aren't necessarily so rooted in this specific era and this specific place where it's, halfway between illegality of homosexuality and kind of more of acceptance of homosexuality. And I don't think we have too many shows that really specifically bear down on that one decade of time, what it was like to be growing up gay.
Yeah, look, there's just so much to talk about with this show, and I wish we had more time for it, but that is all the time we have for Overcompensating, which you can catch now on Prime Video. Chris and Jackson, thank you so much for diving into this with me. Y'all are the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Murphy is a writer for Vanity Fair who co-hosts a podcast called Still Watching. He's in New York. Jackson Weaver is a senior writer for CBC Entertainment News in Toronto. You can also check out the Q interview with Benito Skinner wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Rad Simponpillai, sitting in for Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. We're going to switch gears now and talk about another TV show getting a lot of buzz. 0 to 60 Driving Academy is this new mini sitcom about a family-run driving school in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. It's inspired by the real-life experiences of driving instructor Steve Lawrence, and in this series, Steve is playing a fictionalized version of himself. Take a listen.
Let's start with the seatbelt, shall we? Put on the seatbelt. Let's test the indicator, shall we?
The blinky?
Yes, the indicator.
The boingo! The tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. You're a bit of a stun koala, aren't ya?
Where do you put your hands on the wheel? No.
No?
10 and 2?
Not for me.
Oh.
Different time zone down under.
So much going on in that moment from 0 to 60 Driving Academy. Now, this show is being called Atlantic Canada's first black family sitcom. Guyleigh Johnson is from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and a proud African Nova Scotian herself. She's watched the series, and she's with me here to talk about it. Hi, Guyleigh.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
So look, like I said, this show is being called Atlantic Canada's first black family sitcom. And as someone with deep family ties in Nova Scotia, I wanted to know, what was your first reaction when you heard about the series?
When I first heard about this series, I was super excited. I thought it was cool that the creators were from here. And I know that there's been different things done in film and documentaries here, but I feel like there's nothing like this. So it's really inspiring. I also think that it's going to create a lot of opportunities, especially for young Black artists.
Yeah, because there's been lots of documentaries about the history and all that stuff, and then there's a show like Digstown, but
Yes.
it's a comedy now, right? And of course, look, African Nova Scotian culture. This is obviously it's its own thing. We're not experiencing any of this anywhere else in Canada, right? And I want to know what parts of 0 to 60 Driving Academy, what parts of it felt the most Scotian to you?
The parts that felt the most Scotian to me was, number one, the humor. And I mean, it is a comedy. I think the way we joke, the things that we say, the kind of accents that we have, and you hear people talk about this a lot, but it's different when you actually see it on film. I also think the humor aspect of it is a lot of the time we use humor and laughter, especially through difficult and hard situations. And I feel like you can see that within the show. And those are even too, it just being very family oriented felt very African Nova Scotian, due to our communities and just how we cross connect.
Okay, and so look, what do you think about the show overall? How much were you enjoying it, and what did you enjoy it for?
Yes, I did. I really enjoyed the series. I think that it's fresh, it's fun. Again, it's funny. It felt very familiar. The characters were really relatable, and it did feel like a sense of home. I feel like for somebody who doesn't really know what it's like to be here, or to visit Nova Scotia, I feel like you'll see elements or you'll feel elements in that will intrigue you and make you want to come and visit.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I do want to listen to another moment from this series. It's an exchange between Steve Lawrence's character and an elderly driving student who's actually a little anxious about their exam, but also kind of have the hots for Steve. So let's take a listen.
Come on, you're good.
No. What do I don't know where to sign? What if I can't find my glasses? What if the boy at DMV tries to round me up? No.
Hold up. Don't get the knickers all up in the twists.
My knickers are already in a great big huge knot.
Just gotta find a way to relieve tension, that's all.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
What?
Pound cake.
Pound what?
We make some pound cake.
I don't get it.
My partner.
Oh, no, I had a long day today. I just want to get you off.
That's a lot. So that's just a day in the life of driving instructor Steve Parsons in this new Bell 5 TV1 series, 0 to 60 Driving Academy. Now, look, this is a sitcom about a single father trying to pass on the legacy of his driving school to his kids. Guyleigh, like, how did you feel about the legacy aspect that's running through this show?
I felt good. I think that legacy is really important, especially as African Nova Scotians with deep ties to the land and rich history. And so I think that storytelling and story sharing is extremely important in what we pass down to different generations, and just like how it creates that longevity for generations to come. And so it's really important, especially within our culture.
Okay, well, I mean, and when you talk about this show and trying to grasp that aspect of the culture, I mean, we are talking about a show that's super short. I mean, these episodes are running like 9 to 12 minutes. You know, they're almost like extended sketches. So, like, I mean, is there anything that you felt that could have been done better, or that maybe you just wanted to see more of?
I would say that my only thing when watching it was honestly wanting more. So I wanted longer shows, but also to understanding like the film aspect of it, being able to do like work on a couple of films my own self. I understand when you have like short restriction times, but because that's another thing that I thought could have been shown more is just more parts of like Nova Scotia, more of our Black communities and things like that. But I get it, it's based in the academy, and so that makes sense. But I feel like, yeah, if it was longer and if it could just show more elements of our communities and things like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, this is also, and by the way, when you talk about like showcasing your community, I mean, this is a series that is co-created by African Nova Scotians, right? I mean, I'm talking about like Steve Lawrence, who's, you know, the real life driving school instructor who inspires this. There's also actor Alexandra McLean, who plays Steve's daughter, and she co-wrote this series. What are you hoping a series like this might signal to kind of the larger Canadian television industry?
I think, I hope that it signals how talented and gifted we are, how much room and space we have for opportunity here, how eager and creative people are. I think a lot of the times, especially when you think about Canada as a whole, we kind of get left off the map. A lot of the times people think that Black people don't exist here without knowing like our rich and deep history. And so I think it just creates more exposure, more opportunities. And again, that it creates a staple for us so that people know that we are gifted and we are talented.
Oh, nice. Well, then in that respect, like, I mean, look, we have this show, 0 to 60 Driving Academy, representing the culture there. Is there something else from the culture that you feel deeply attached to that you would want others, Canadians, to discover?
I think like just how we interact and how we community build. Like, again, I think we're very unique and distinct in terms of the way that our Black communities were created here and how we cross connect in terms of being family or related or even just knowing each other. And so I think just coming, experiencing that, learning about that, I feel like, yeah, that's an experience within itself.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Guyleigh, for talking to me about the show and talking to me about your beautiful culture.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got to leave it there. Guyleigh Johnson is an author and spoken word artist. She's in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. You can catch the new series 0 to 60 Driving Academy right now on Bell 5 TV1.